I want to talk a little bit about something that folks tend to struggle with when immersing themselves in this idea of what skills a kid might lack. They often will see a child behaving in the desired way in one circumstance but not in another, which will lead them to question, how could it be a skills deficit if sometimes he's able to do it? I have a really hard time figuring out, is this can't or won't? Is it that he really can't because of a lack of skill, or he just doesn't wanna? Now, the first thing to point out is that compliance really is a skill, not just a choice. We tend to think of compliance as a simple choice. He can choose whether to comply or not. Actually, it's not that simple. He can choose whether to comply if he has the skills to do so in the first place. Compliant kids have good skills in these 5 areas. And for them, oftentimes, compliance is a choice if they have good skills in those 5 areas. Lack skills somewhere on that list, and compliance is not simply a choice. And I like to say, show me a challenging kid, and I will show you a kid I can find somewhere on that list. For sure. Now, one easy way, though, to help people with this notion of can't versus won't, because people really struggle with this. They'll say, well, if your explanation guides your intervention, how do you tell whether it's can't or won't so you know what to do? I mean, moment to moment, kid to kid, how do you decide? What I tell people is, make it easy on yourselves. Hedge your bets. And here's what I mean by that. If you assume that a kid can't do something, and they can't, they lack the skill, well, then you're handling it the right way. But what if you assume that they can't when actually they can and they just don't want to? So treat them like they can't, but it turns out they don't want to. I don't actually think you've lost a lot by treating a kid like he can't and trying to help if it turns out he just doesn't want to. But now try the reverse on for size. Treat a kid like he just doesn't wanna when it turns out he actually can't, and now you're headed down that very dangerous path we talked about earlier this morning. So I'll tell people, it's very hard to tell the difference between can't and won't in any particular moment in time. Hedge your bets. Always going to be safer to assume can't. If you're wrong, you won't have lost much. Now, I think for those of us who have pretty good skills in those 5 areas and did as a child, one of the things that's very hard is to imagine how something could be can't instead of won't when it seems so easy. Great example of that is, you'll ask a kid at home to turn off the TV and come to dinner. And how hard is that? Right? I mean, you just press the button and walk over there. That's not a skill, a complicated skill at all, right? And yet, for some kids, that's actually hard to do. And think developmentally, who's bad at doing stuff like that? 2-year-olds. 4-year-olds tend to be better. 6-year-olds better. But some 8-year-olds look like they're 2 when it comes to... And it's very hard if you're somebody who shifts gears and transitions really rapidly and easily, and let's say most of the kids you've been around do too. When you see somebody who doesn't, it's very hard to see that as can't instead of won't.